this without crying. I started crying once this morning when my son was baptized. It was very exciting to me. I was born to a very young couple. My mother was 16 and my father was 21. They got married, but they divorced when I was 5, and my baby sister and I moved in with our father into my grandparents' house. My mother moved back to Florida. We had minimal contact with her, including a couple of visits to Florida, until I was about 10. She was then out of the picture altogether until a very brief period in my 20s. My grandfather died when I was 11, and when I was 15, my father took my sister and moved in with his then girlfriend, whom he later married. She had a small house and 3 daughters of her own, so I opted to stay with Grandma. We didn't go to church or speak of spiritual things at all when I was growing up. I went to a couple neighborhood VBSs, visited a friend's church a couple times. That was all about all the exposure to Christianity I had until my teenage years, and it made very little impact at the time. My grandma operated under the theory that we were Christians because we believed in some vague God, and she was a good person because she had good intentions. Therefore, she was going to heaven. That worked for me, along with the self-serving belief that if it feels good, it must be good. Of course, my grandma also mocked Bible thumpers and holy rollers. On my first day of 10th grade, I met a very strange boy. However, he had a good sense of humor, and we became fast friends. In fact, we were best friends and nearly inseparable. I laughed at the notion of dating him. He was not my type, whatever that was. Of course, a year later, when my boyfriend at the time broke up with me, Rob didn't waste any time, and the rest is history. I suffered quite a bit from depression from my teenage years on. I was never suicidal to the point that I would have attempted it, but sometimes I just wanted to die. When I was 16, I was crying my eyes out to Rob during one of those episodes, just telling him I just didn't know what was wrong with me. He grew up in a Christian home, and he was in a period of rebellion at the time, but he knew what I needed. He proceeded to walk me down the Romans road and had me pray the sinner's prayer with him. I didn't feel any different. His mother bought me my first Bible, and I read a lot of it. I still didn't feel any different. The changes were to come about quite a bit later. When I was in my second semester of my senior year, I became pregnant. Rob wanted to get married, but I was terrified to make that commitment at such a young age, especially after my parents' example. I chose to give up our son for adoption, and he supported my decision, even though he ended up resenting me for it. After the adoption, I felt lost and empty. On a subconscious level, I wanted to replace that child. And less than a year later, I was pregnant with Mark. At this time, my grandma gave me the ultimatum that I was either to stay away from him altogether or move out. Rob's family took me in, even though his mother was dying of cancer. The adoption just ended up escalating what was already a great deal of turmoil in our relationship at that time. Living together didn't make things any easier. We fought constantly. Our anger and pain was intense. Yet somehow, through that time, we stayed together. Mark was born in December of '92, and Rob's mother passed away in April of 1993. Despite our tumultuous relationship, Rob and I finally came to a place where we decided it was now or never. We were either going to get married and make it work, or move on. We married on July 30th, 1993. Our relationship was still pretty rocky for the first several years of our marriage. That's a story for another day. God did his miracle thing. And though we have had rough patches, and who doesn't, for the most part, we have a very good relationship. It was around the time that I got pregnant with Mark that I finally started to really contemplate spiritual things and started going to church with Rob's family. I went through a long period of spiritual warfare, where I felt I had to pray the sinner's prayer with the pastor every single week in case it didn't stick the last time. I had nightmares about being left behind in the rapture. I couldn't be alone in a dark room because I felt evil presences staring in the window at me. I had my first panic attack in my sleep. One day, I felt the presence of the Holy Spirit in me, like a light bulb turning on, and just like that, all the warfare ended and I had peace. Since then, I've been through much. Many times I've stumbled and fallen, and yet God's grace has always been there to help me up again. For as many times as I have let him down, he has never left nor forsaken me, and I know that he never will. Though I often fail, I keep trying to serve him with my life. When we get caught up in life's trials, frustrations, and heartbreaks, he uses things in ways that we would never imagine. I've done many things in my life that I'm not proud of. But he takes even the evil that I do, and uses it for his glory. That's why I consider my life a miracle in progress.